Hi, thanks for listening. We are here with Deb Grubbe. She's an old friend of mine. Deb has a lot of experience as a senior executive with both BP and with DuPont. She's nice enough to talk a little bit about communications and her background and safety and a whole bunch of fun stuff. Deb, can you say hi to everyone?
I can, Gordon. It's good to see you. It's good to be with you and Communication for Geeks this afternoon. Hello, everyone. Yeah.
All right, so let's get started. So, Deb, you started your career as an engineer with all the technical duties that come along with that. Can you tell me about the early days? Tell me how you got started.
Oh, wow, that's a story. Reaching back. Anyway, I started out, the very first job I got, or I had to do, was to write operating instructions and train operators on an anhydrous HCl vaporizer. And I had no clue what an anhydrous HCl vaporizer was or did, other than it vaporized it, you know? That's right. Otherwise, and so I thought, oh gosh, now how am I going to train operators, write startup instructions, and I've never even seen the equipment, much less anything about the process. So I realized then and there that there was a whole bunch of information out there in people's heads somewhere in the world that I had to learn. I had to translate it, and then I had to put it out so that I could understand it well enough to teach others how to do it. And all of that was out there somewhere. So I had to sort of go find out. And that you go find out by asking a lot of questions and realizing that the people that you're going to meet know a lot more about the subject than you do. And so you ask, like I said, ask questions and sort of be open to what they have to say. Listen very carefully to what they have to say. And I found myself in my third week of the job, Gordon. I was on a plane going to meet a bunch of strangers that had one of these plants. And, my struggle was, could I ask them the right questions and get the right information that I needed so that I could do my job?
Yeah, and the listening, and I want to talk more about that, but one thing I'm dying to ask you. I remember you told me that when you were in high school, you read the announcements.
Yeah.
Can you tell us that story? How did that affect your early career? I'm dying to hear about that story again.
Well, it's an interesting story from the standpoint of that I went to a West Suburban Chicago large public high school, and they had two shifts. The high school was overcrowded, so they started some kids earlier than others. And so when everybody was together in the school, at the very first, it was really like the second period of the day, but it was the first period for half the school. They had read the announcements, and the announcements were about a page worth of, events at the school, reminders about sports events, clubs, information, awards that students have gotten, a whole bunch of different things like that. And I got asked by the English teacher, Jean Farringa, would you please, we'd like you to read these announcements, and it's for a year, and you're going to do it for a week, and then there's going to be another person to do it for a week. And so they had one young man do it and me do it. And so I thought, okay, fine, we go ahead and do that. So I learned a lot about microphones and hot mics, and I learned about pronunciation, and I learned about making sure that one's clear when they speak, and it was just a wonderful experience. It got me very familiar and comfortable with having a microphone, basically shoved into my face. And it was really very helpful. I was a shy person in high school, and I was really very, I would say probably introverted at some level and quiet. I was a studious kind of type and liked sports, but was quiet. And I found that I'm not that way now, and I think some of that coming out of my shell, so to speak, had to do with that. And I was afraid also, and this gets into the conversation we're having today, I was afraid to talk in front of a large group. I mean, we're talking knee knocking, heart pounding in the chest, deathly afraid kind of stuff, and I was, and so I had to overcome that. And I realized that talking, sort of reading stuff into a microphone helped get me started on that journey of trying to overcome my fears.
Oh, that's great. So, Deb, let's fast forward from the time you were in high school to when you and I dealt with the senior executives when we were doing our safety work. One of the issues that I saw is you and I could go into a company and we could see their management system issues and we could see what problems they were having, and we could see that the senior executives couldn't communicate that safety is a top value, is a top priority. Why was that so hard for them to do? What do you think is going on there?
Well, like some of our earlier discussions with operators and others, it's important to empathize with if you're going to be selling any, as a sales and marketing executive, anyone knows that you have to put yourself in your customer's shoes and look at the world from your customer's sort of eyeballs. And that means having to empathize what your customer's feeling. So a couple of things. One is, and these executives know that when you walk in the door, you're there because someone perceives that there's improvements to be made. And there's, and that the current organizational performance is not up to what some people or some group of stakeholders would require or desire. So that's one thing. And they recognize that they're paying you money for this. And then the second thing is to acknowledge internally that it's not all broken. There are things that the home team, so to speak, is doing well. And you need to be sensitive to the fact that, okay, sort of tease out what's the stuff that's good here and what's the stuff that needs improvement. And as you go through that process of separating out this is being done well, you talk to the executives about, there's some stuff going on here that you do really well, and it's this and it's this, and you talk about it in enough detail that they understand, yes, they really do. This person really does understand what I'm facing. They really do understand what's going on here, right? Because most executives have gotten to where they've gotten by doing things, the right things in the right way at the right time. And it's really hard for them to acknowledge sometimes that there are problems. And so the key is to, it's sort of a kid glove kind of discussion, where you talk about what's right and then you talk about what can be improved. You don't necessarily, making someone feel bad when you're trying to sell them something is not productive. My experience has been.
No, I found that doesn't work too well.
Yeah. Yeah, because everybody has a piece of stuff they're doing well. And the key is to find it and to acknowledge it and to say, good job. And now let's look at, here's some other things. What do you think about that? And ask them questions too. I think executives respond very well to good questions. And in fact, my experience has been with executives that great executives ask really showstopper questions. They really think about the questions that they want to ask their teams and even more importantly, their organization. So the good executives will ask questions and then listen. And I think the other key is this listening piece. Back to the high school story, the English teacher, Jean Farringa, she said, to the class, and I'll never forget this, she said, you are given 2 ears and 1 mouth to use in that proportion. And what I see today, Gordon, it's interesting. What I see is I see so many people intent on talking and so very few intent on understanding through listening. It's an interesting thing.
From your ears to from your mouth to God's ears. Okay.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't go that far, but okay.
Or how about this? Amen. I couldn't agree more. And that's one of the concepts that we teach. And in fact, when we do our corporate training, the first thing we do is listening. We teach them listening skills. So moving forward, one of the things that I found, as you advance in your career, you do a little less managing and more teaching and coaching. Can you tell us some of the things you've learned over the years from training managers and getting them ready to take the next level up to, let's say, director level? What are some of the things that you found by teaching others?
I'll tell you, one of the things, first of all, I'll just claim right now that I am not a trained executive coach. Okay, I've come by it through just experiencing life myself and working with many people over the years, and observing closely what others do. So let me lay that disclaimer out first, because I don't see myself in that way. So thank you for your compliment. I'll take that as a compliment. I will say that it goes back to the conversations with the operators around that anhydrous HCl vaporizer. They had a lot of knowledge, and my job was to tease that knowledge out of them, repackage it, and help others learn from what they knew. And so that's how you do work with managers in a session. You stand before them and you say, look, we're both going to learn from each other. We're going to be together for 2 days or 1 day or 2 hours, and we're going to learn from each other during this period of time. You're going to learn some things from me, and I fully expect that I'm going to learn some things from you. No one has a lock on total knowledge here, and no one, while I have maybe some more expertise in this one area I'm supposed to instruct in today, that doesn't necessarily make me an expert in everything. And so I'm going to be open to what I can learn from you. And so we are going to learn together, and approaching it in that way as a team, and approaching it around the fact of being sensitive to the fact that there's this group of people sitting there thinking who knows what kinds of stuff. Some of them have sick parents or sick kids. Or 1 or 2 may be going through a divorce. You know, they have all sorts of issues that may be occupying their mind at the time. And so you don't want to necessarily add to the burden by not being sensitive to what their situations are. So put yourself in their shoes, empathize, as I said earlier, put yourself in their shoes, and create an atmosphere in the learning environment so that managers can learn from the instructor, but managers can also learn from each other. And if you can get it to a spot where managers can learn from each other, then you're creating the right kind of teamwork that's going to help you do business better.
And speaking of training, I know that DuPont did a lot of training of their technical staff during your career. So how was that training received, and why is it that some people really respond well and some people respond poorly to it?
Well, I think their comfort level affects them when they do the training. But I'll tell you, when I had my very first training on how to give a presentation, I blew it. I was horrible. And I realized that I said, oh gosh, I really got to do some more work in this area. And I'm going to have to put myself in an uncomfortable position because I still hadn't worked out all those high school bugs. And you get more in university now, but back, in the 70s, there wasn't a lot of formal presentations as part of your university curriculum either. You had one class in speech, and very few times in engineering school did you have to stand up and talk. And so I realized I had to do this. So what I did is I went out and I volunteered back at my university. I said, I want to come volunteer and give lectures to classes in areas. And so one area where I had some expertise was in project management, and in being a woman engineer talking to freshman women. I could easily do that. And so I used that opportunity to hone my skills. And I actually did 1 or 2 lectures a year in front of groups of, say, 200 to 300 freshmen where I had no notes, and I just sort of told stories, because people remember stories, and I would tell my life through stories and have them be some key lessons in there too. And they obviously loved it because I kept on getting asked to come back. So that's always the good piece about being a trainer or a coach, is if you get asked to come back, then you know you've hit the home run. And I was very fortunate to be able to do that, and that helped me work out the bugs in my own hardwiring inside my head so that I could just stand up in front of any audience, make them feel at home, help them understand who I am, warm up to me, and then, you know, deliver what I needed to deliver and enjoy it at the same time. Because because the audience can tell whether or not you're having fun. If the audience sees you as uncomfortable and stilted, they're going to be uncomfortable and stilted because they'll empathize with you, or they'll tune you out and they'll turn on, you know, their phones and they'll start doing other things. And you don't want that. You want them to listen to you. And so it's interesting, the skills are interesting.
Yeah, and this was all in the day before Twitter and internet and email and PowerPoints. And now it's even more important because there's so many other distractions to capture people's attention.
Well, not only that, but these new social media require that you have different skills. It is a different level of skill to go have a conversation with someone than to put together a 140 character tweet. And and there's pluses, there's things to know in all those various media. And so I think some of the work that you're doing is really important to help people sort out. You know, you can be good at Twitter, but that doesn't mean you're going to be good at having a conversation to convince somebody to buy something. So I'm all supportive of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and vice versa. Yeah, just because you can give. Also, I found that getting your idea down to 140, as we like to say, residual message, 140 character residual message, that is not easy. Being concise can be difficult.
Well, that's true. And sometimes concise is good for communicating some things, but you cannot sometimes communicate other more complex senses or contexts. You know, what my learning has been, whenever I have a disagreement with someone, I always go back and I say, what is the context in which they are looking at the problem? And what I find 100% of the time in my life, I've found that the person I'm trying to discuss with, convince, whatever, is seeing something that either I don't see or they have a totally different context in which they're looking at things. Or my context is missing some things that they have.
Absolutely. I found that with my consulting, when there was a big problem that somebody was just awful at something that wouldn't do it, pull them aside and just genuinely ask a question. And wow, do you learn some interesting stuff, and it makes you just much better at your job too.
Exactly.
So I have one more question actually two more questions. Your career is kind of like your life. Things don't always work out exactly like you would like them to. Is there one situation where you think, gee, I really wish I could do that one over again? And maybe it's not a communication issue, but other people reading this would love to hear from your perspective of something that didn't go quite as well as you would have liked and some of the things you learned and how you grew from it.
That's a real good one. And a tough one to answer because there's so many places that I could do better. I think one in the form of communication. I think I would have done better and got it out of the blocks faster if I had more, if I had practiced more during my university years doing public speaking. That would have helped me. I recovered okay from it and certainly, did fine. But I may have done even better if I had been better in the beginning. So because I do think time is an essence. in that area. You have to develop it quickly, especially if you want to have a really successful career by the definition that most people have of success. You have to be a good communicator.
Yeah, and it's often said that that luck, it's a convergence of preparation and opportunity. And we really focus on the former, the preparation. So from a preparation standpoint, what is the one or two or even three things that you would tell young engineers to do earlier in their career? And by engineers, I mean technical people, programmers, statisticians, anyone with a really technical background. What are the one, two, or three things you would tell them to do to get set up for a really terrific career?
Okay, let me take a stab at that. I think the first one goes back to something we've already mentioned, and that is listen clearly and listen with empathy. That would be the first one. The second recommendation would be you got to be good at what you do. If you're going to have a good career, you got to be good at what you do. So you got to deliver the results, and you have to deliver the results outstanding. They have to be above average results, and they have to be consistent year in and year out. It's not, you don't get promoted on a one-time great outcome. It's you have to be consistently able to demonstrate that you can handle whatever comes your way. So there's an element of delivering always over and above. And I think lastly, it's important to think broadly. And let me talk about what that means. The analogy is the stonemason who's chipping at a stone, and the construction. This is they're building a cathedral, okay, and this is the context. They're building a cathedral. It's the Middle Ages, and the priest comes by and he asks, what are you doing? And the one stonemason says, I'm chipping at a stone, and another stonemason would say, I'm building a cathedral. Another stonemason would say, I am creating a house of worship or something like that. So they're looking at a very, very broad context, anywhere from chipping a stone to building a building to creating a house of worship. And so what you have is different ways of thinking about the very same activity. And that's what I mean by thinking broadly, because I think so many people miss opportunities in life because they're thinking too narrowly about it and not broadly enough.
Mm-hmm. That is some great advice. And that's one of the things that we see with young technical people. They often struggle to think broadly and to see things as a senior executive would. How do you look at things outside of your work, outside of your company, and outside of your market? How do you really think big like that? That's something that a lot of people struggle with.
Well, and the good news today is that with global communication and the world being as small as it's large, but being as small as it is, if you have the right understanding and context, you can actually begin to see how an incident or an event that occurs on the other side of the world can have business implications to you and can actually affect your family.
Yep, the world is getting smaller, that's for sure. Okay.
Very true.
Well, Deb, thank you so much. We're running close to our hard stop, but do you have any more parting words for our listeners?
Yeah, a couple things. I think it's very important as you think of communication to not just think about how smart you are, because I think everybody is very, very bright. The key is to think about how can I take the words and the thoughts inside my own head and get them into someone else's head and have them mean and have them carry the same meaning with them so that it doesn't get twisted. And I'm sure that's probably a lot about what you're about, but I see that as sometimes we let our intelligence get in the way, or our presumed intelligence around someone else get in the way, and it ends up being a miscommunication. The last thing I want to add too, though, is if you find that you're trying these various communications, be it public speaking or be it listening, and you're having difficulty, don't give up. That would be, I'll invoke Winston Churchill around never, never, never give up. Because I think that's the piece, because there's going to be a lot of things that may not go right on the first try. And the real challenge is not whether you get knocked down in life, it's how you get back up. That makes the difference. And so I would encourage people to continue to work on something if they believe it's important to their future, and to not stop.
And that is some great advice. Okay, Deb, thank you so much. This has been really helpful. I'm looking forward to putting this all together and doing the editing, and I'm sure this is going to work out great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gordon. It's been a pleasure to spend time with you this afternoon, and I wish you best success with Communication for Geeks.